Good evening. Welcome to our Tuesday evening workshop here. If the three of you could introduce yourselves and then please proceed.
Sure, Mr. Mayor, Heather Hunter, City Administrator for the City of Lewiston.
Tracy Roy, City Finance Director of Lewiston.
Mary Ann Brencheck, the Public Works Director.
So, Mr. Mayor and City Council, we thought we're about a little over a week into these budget workshops, so we thought we would bring back some Q&A for the viewing audience of questions that were answered through these workshops that the viewing audience might be able to hear the answers as well. There was a question regarding cleaning services for all of the various buildings and the frequency. Right now, the cleaning is done Monday through Friday at all of the buildings. There are basic tasks assigned for each night, including floors, trash, recycling, and so forth. They have weekly tasks, and then they have quarterly and so forth, kind of like a spring house cleaning portion of that. As far as scaling back those hours, there is a bit of a concern there because of them being very public buildings and the amount of people going through, particularly in the winter and the spring months with the sand and salt and everything that gets around, but we will take a look at that as well. There were questions on overtime. As we go back through and propose budget adjustments to you, all of the overtime budgets will be looked at again a second time around. Looking at...
Excuse me, when you say looked at again, like what do you mean by that?
We go through each line item one more time just to kind of look for revised estimates. Is there another funding source? How firm are these? We're now 2 months further into the operating budget, so it gives us an additional historical information to compare to. So there's a variety of things when we go through it, that third pass. As far as report outs from the parking garage and verifying hours of patrolling, the patrols are doing weekdays from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m. and they go through the 3 garages that were initially talked about. That's Southern Gateway, Oak Street, and Brian, do you remember the third one?
They do this.
Centerville Parking Garage. So I know this was a question that was raised early on are we better off to keep paying the $60,000 or hiring somebody? Looking at, based upon wages that we're seeing, there's 2 hours of overtime included in this because of the duration that we want the person to cover, and by the time we bring them on with fringe benefits, it's pretty comparable to what we were paying. The beauty of it with the contract is, once we decide that, okay, we're in a better position, we can terminate that contract versus, absorbing an employee within the organization. The other piece is with the parking garage gates going back online after the first of the year, we want to make sure everything is working properly, and having that presence in the garage for a little bit longer, I think is worthy of that. One thing I wrote in, the email that I sent out, this is something if we want to pilot for 1 more year to see how things are going and what the activity in the garage is. Once we have more people going in there on a regular basis and the gates are operational and so forth, we could justify doing it for 1 more year because we can terminate that at any point in time. It's not a normal operating repeat or recurring budgetary line item that we need, like utilities or overtime or something like that. So we could do that for 1 more year if that is amicable to the council. The other piece, we talked about how much it would cost to increase the brightness of the streetlights around intersections. Depending on the wattage the council selects, it would be anywhere between $3,100 and $4,300 per intersection. The rec department, currently they have just under 6,000 rec online accounts for the various programs and individual kiddos that have enrolled in our program, of the which a little over 4,200 are Lewiston residents, and yes, there is a non-residence fee that is charged for programming. The calls for service, I believe the fire chief had sent that out, but for calendar year 2022, they had a total call volume of 2,554 calls. 182 of those calls were actual fires. 49 were building structures. The other 133 were cooking, fires, chimney, vehicle rubbish, and outside. And then they had 82 incidents of mutual aid calls that they had to respond to. So that pretty much gets us caught up with most of the questions and answers that were covered through the workshop. So Tracy?
So we're going to start with the water for the utility funds on page 81. There is no recommended rate increase in water, sewer, or stormwater in this budget. Revenues decreased by $612,697 or 2.3%, with expenses increasing $340,941 or 5.3%. This produces an operating surplus of $18,011. The utility fund has one new program request on page 18, and this is not in the current budget. This is that project management software that we saw in the engineering piece that was going to pay $15,000, and then utilities would pay $45,000. So 15 from water, 15 from sewer, and 15 from stormwater. So again, this is not in the budget. Personnel services increased $77,782. This is attributed to regular time increasing by $79,322. These are steps and COLAs. Overtime offset by a decrease of temporary wages of $2,860. Fringe benefits decreased $12,787. This reflects an increase in the main PERS, which is the retirement, of $5,502. FICA increase expense remains flat as retirement savings and unemployment, clothing allowance, and other benefits total a decrease of $201. Debt service decreases $58,655 for debt coming off. Capital outlay is a decrease of $284,200, which is on page 78. It shows the detail for the operating and the LCIP. Operating expenses increase $340,941.
The capital is on page 80.
Oh, sorry.
It's okay.
I must have forgot to change that one. The operating expenses increased $340,941 or 5.3%. Under the source of supply division, an increase of $179,770. Most of this results from an increase in the purchase power utility of $178,200, which is the increase for the electricity delivery cost, as you saw in each other departments that we have gone through. A small increase in material and supplies such as tools, fit-in electrical wires, and chlorine equipment and sensor. Under the water treatment division, you'll see an increase of $234,464. This is an increase in the watershed apportionment of $6,750. Contractual services of $8,750 for our portion of the shared staff employed by the Auburn Water District. The chemicals increased $218,964. This is attributed to the per unit cost increase, particularly in the disinfectants, with the large increase in phosphate of $71,568. In the division of distribution and expense of operation, you'll see an increase of $158,545. The increase is in material supplies for $2,500. For the water's portion of the replacement of the 2016 GPS unit, you'll see this in all three. You'll see it in water, sewer, and stormwater. Paving for $152,495 for the needs. Rental of equipment increased $3,550 for the excavator rental. In the division of 670, you'll see an increase of $3,521. You'll see a decrease in the seminars, travel, and school of $270. You'll see a decrease in the printing supplies of $1,470 due to the decrease of the cost of the bills. Printing going from .207 to .12. We're going with a new company. The contract ends in fiscal year '23 with the company that we currently have. A new contract will be started, so it's less money, so you'll see a decrease in the sewer. Water pays 30% of the bills. Offset of an increase of contractual services of $3,014 for the cost of the collections for the overhead for the Treasury office portion. And you'll see an increase of $42,500 in all insurances, $1,667. All contracted services, for $40,670. This is for the general fund portion of the administration piece that's charged. An increase in the regulation commission's expense of $3,000 for the assessment of the state of Maine. A decrease of training of $1,406 and a decrease of dues of $1,430. So I'll stop here for any questions in water.
Councilor Pease.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How many employees does the Water Division have? Or total sewage, water, sewer?
So Counselor, if you turn to page 85 and 86, you'll see the listing. With the utilities, most of the employees that are full-time charged to the utilities are split between at least two of the utilities, if not all three. So typically, if you look through there, I would say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 19 full-time work for water and/or water sewer. And then stormwater is a combination of general fund employees and engineers and highway workers that do stormwater functions. But the titles in that listing are on page 85 and 86.
Just I noticed it's a little over $1 million just in staff. And that's not counting any bennies, workman's comp,
Yeah.
FICA, any of that.
There's a lot of operating certifications and handling the utility funds that are required. And, maybe the director can jump in, but they've been having, because of those certifications needed, they've been having a hard time filling some of those positions right now.
Right. And while we're talking about that, I know you mentioned overtime, that we're going to touch it again. I'm having a hard time with $42,000 worth of overtime for that department. If you divided it up, it's like $800 a week. There's somebody on all the time?
There is people that are on call, and so that's an ongoing piece, one person on call. But there also has been 20 breaks in '22 and already 9 breaks within this year since January. So it will be about the same number. You'll see that affected in next year's paving, because we got to go back and pave those areas. So the breaks have been high. That's your overtime
I know, I
mostly.
called one in.
Yeah, because the overtime for plowing, when those guys are plowing, goes into winter. So
Okay.
their overtime is really on call-ins and breaks.
So it's well needed.
Yeah, we don't send them in if they don't need it. You know what I mean? You got that person on call, but the team doesn't come in unless it's necessary.
Okay, thank you.
And I was going to say, I know the breaks haven't always happened Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. Councilor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Quick question on 6050, rental of equipment. You mentioned an excavator. Is this something that is an in-house rental? We own the equipment, it's discharged out to the motor pool or
Yes.
something like that.
Yes.
We're not going outside or.
Anything further,
No, thank you,
Counselor?
Mr.
Counselor McCarthy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Utilities, a five-fold increase in utilities?
There was a credit, that is the Brookfield
That's
credit piece we were getting credited from Brookfield for a certain amount that was incorrect, so that was corrected this year. So that's a piece of it, besides the increase in all the meters that we have
Yeah,
out
I
there.
understand everything is going up, but
But does that-
five-fold is sort of a shock. I wasn't aware of the Brookfield issue.
Yeah, the credit, Brookfield, the credit in past years was rather significant, and that has diminished significantly once they've gone through and done the audit of the calculation. So it's significantly reduced that credit.
Thank you.
The good thing is they're not going retroactive.
I guess we're all set.
So we're going to move on to the sewer, which is on page 87. Increase in revenue of $95,453 or 1.4. An increase in expenditures of $438,174 or 592. This produces an operating deficit of $902,171 with enough carry forward cash to absorb it without a rate increase. Again, there'll be no rate increase in sewer, as you saw in water. Personnel services increased $68,476. This is regular time rose $63,401 for steps and colas, and overtime increased $5,075. Fringe and benefits increased $25,897, which is reflected increase in main PERS. Again, this is the retirement, $4,170. Health insurance, HRA, retirement savings had an increase of $16,039. This is based on the new employee selections. Increase in deferred comp of $506. Increase in FICA at $5,039. And a slight increase in workers' comp of $143. Debt service increased $90,725 for the estimated debt on the new CIP. Treatment plant increased $178,848, or 51.3%. An estimated 5% increase in operating costs, and LOPCO debt increase of $9,756. Capital outlay decrease of $232,772. Page 80 is where you can find the detail of the operating the LCIP. Operating expenses increased $307,000 or 265.8%. In the pump station, increase of $33,820. Purchase power and utility and materials and supplies are estimated to have the highest increase. Purchase power utilities is $18,720. Material and supplies are $13,100, with a minor increase in the contractuals of $2,000. Sewer treatment increased $161,328, same as mentioned above from the pump station. Transmission operation decrease of $268,500. Increased our notes of material and supplies of $2,500. And then the sewers, this is also what I mentioned in the water. That's that portion of the sewer to replace the 2016 GPS unit that needs to be replaced, with a decrease in contractual services of $268,000 for the removal of the water meters, radio, and radiohead devices due to the supply issue. They cannot get them, so they removed them out of the budget this year. Rental of equipment, $3,000 for reduction of the pickup truck for the summer mowing. Under the customer accounts, there's an increase of $13,990. This increase is in the contractual services of $14,832, which is the general fund portion. Postage of $1,252. These are for sewer lien notices. The certification amount will go up with the postage. And then printing is a decrease, as we saw earlier in the water, of $1,470 due to that new contract coming on and less cost. Sewer pays 30% of those bills that go out. Seminars, travel, and schools decreased $620. This is the removal of the main water training for the PUC rules. The next department is an increase of $5,438, all in insurances, including health of $1,493. Increase in contractual services of $2,920 for the census customer portal. Dues of $25, a decrease of $2,200 for seminars, travel, and schools for budget to actual. And that is all of sewer. Are there any questions for the sewer department?
No, I think we can proceed.
Okay. Stormwater is on page 92. Revenues increased 66,000. Overall expenditures totaled 92 increase of 92,939 or 2.55%, leaving an operating cash deficit of 667,721, which is covered on cash on hand. Personnel services, an increase of 9,141. There are no full-time positions charged here. It's a percentage, as Heather had mentioned earlier. Regular time increased $8,741. Overtime increased $800 due to the increased cross-charging of salary adjustments, offset by the temp wages of decreasing $400. Fringe increased $6,132. The reflected increase is in main PERS retirement of $259, FICA and Medicare at $818, health insurance $5,137 due to the employees cross-charged from the general fund. Debt service increased $56,315 for the estimated new debt of the CIP. Capital outlay increased $3,000. On page 80, again, is the detail for the operating and the CIP. Operating expenses increased $18,351 or 3.49%. Planning and permit division increased $440. This increase is due to the rental equipment of $1,836 for the increase in the surcharge for the gas of unit 604. Decrease in seminars, training, and school of $550. This is due to actual budget to actual. And a decrease in the printing services of $500 due to that, the printing invoices that you saw in the water and sewer decreasing because of the new contract. Material and supplies, $340, due to the removal of the catch basin stenciling and painting. Storage and retention division increased $8,266. Increase in purchase power utility of $1,456. This is due to the delivery cost of electricity. Increase in contracted services of $7,500 for the cost of the cleaning, the CSO storage 2 times a year. Increase in rental equipment of $310 for the increase of the gas surcharges, with a decrease of $1,000 in materials and supplies for the decrease in the riprap and other materials for maintenance for the detention pond. Collection systems operations increase of $7,500. Increase in contractual services of engineer $1,000 due to the increase in cost of MS4 compliance and the catch basin inspection. Material and supplies, $4,500 for the general price increase across the stormwater portion, and the portion of the stormwater for the replacement of the 2016 GPS unit that needs to be replaced. Rental equipment charge from Public Works totals $2,000 due to the surcharge of the gas for the vehicle for the watershed. Customer accounts division increased $2,139 due to the increase in postage, $1,771 for the cost of certified mail-in. Contractual services for the general funds overhead totaling $4,060. Reflects charges from the services from the general fund. Decrease in the printing service, $1,960 due to the cost of bills. Stormwater pays 40% of those. Decrease in material and supplies of $100 due to the decrease in materials needed. Decrease in insurance of $1,012 due to the decrease in property and general liability, which offset the increase for the inland and the auto. Slight decrease of $100 in dues for the dig safe reduction. So that is stormwater. Is there any questions on stormwater?
I think we're
All
good.
set?
So we'll switch over and jump onto library and invite our library director up.
Hello, I'm Marcella Paris, the library director.
So library is on page 73 and 74. So there's an overall increase of $73,070 or 6.3%. Library administration on page 73. Personal service increased $4,456 for COLAs for the two positions. Contracted services decreased $1,441 with an increase in postage of $78 and a decrease in repairs and equipment of $2,229 for the maintenance of photocopies being budgeted in the MIS department for this fiscal year, as we mentioned in the other departments. Supplies increased $500 for office supplies based on the usage, and fixed costs remained flat. Lending Service Division had an overall increase of $21,305 or 3.6. Personal Services had an increase of $19,467. Regular wages of $6,971 due to steps. Temporary wages of $12,496, which is attributed to the minimum wage increase. Minimum wage January 1st, 23 went to $14. January 1st, 24 will go up to $15, and January 1st of 25 will go up to $16. Contracted services decreased $200. Decrease is all in the microfilm being completed by the Bates College. That is reducing in fiscal year 24. Supplies increased $2,038. A minor increase in the book budget to tend to reflect the prices of increases versus the increase in quantity ordered. Collection services on page 74. You'll see an overall decrease of $16,560 or 8.2%. Personal services decreased $18,785. A decrease in the regular wages of $19,973. This is due to a vacant position hired at a lower step with a slight increase in temporary wages of $865. Contracted services increased $1,625 in maintenance and licenses for the subscription for the annual security software. Supplies increased $600 in office supplies for specialty supplies for processing books and audiovisual items. Library building is also on page 74. You'll see an overall increase of $64,810 or 28.7%. Personal services decreased $209. This is where Public Works charges allocations adjust for their time when they work over at the building. Contracted services, increase of $65,319. The increase is in utility, electricity, and heat. You will see that on that budget on page 74, you're going to see it split out. Last year, it was all in one. That's why it kind of looks like one account is way more than, but you'll see that due to the Johnson controls, as we mentioned in prior meetings, that it'll be easier to track the savings from the Johnson control contract. Cleaning, $16,212 due to add in Saturday cleaning to the contract. A decrease in repair and buildings of $1,568. This is due to the replacement of the HVAC units that are on top of the roof from the Johnson Control project project, so that will reduce the repairs of the units that have been being repaired. Supplies decreased $200 and household supplies based on consumption. That is library. Any questions?
Councilor Harriman?
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Director Perez and your whole staff. You just do an awful lot there with a little bit, so thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Councilor Pease.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That seems like there's an awful lot of staff there, a lot of temporary staff. Is that really necessary?
The library is open 50 hours a week. We have 13.5 full-time positions, and if you spread out the math in a building that's 3 stories, it's in order to staff it safely, we do need extra staff, and so these are part-time rather than adding full-time positions.
Yes, but you're looking at $844,000. No,
The bulk of that is the full-time.
well, salary, this is, what I'm talking about is regular salaries. I'm not talking, there's $195,000 in just temp wages. And then you have $648,000 in staff. And that's for 19 people?
It's about 19, yes.
Excuse me, Matt.
So you have 13 full, I'm sorry,
Go ahead.
13 full-timers, how many part-timers? The rest,
It-
you have
the rest
19
are part-
total staff.
19 full-time equivalents. So in terms of individual people, it can fluctuate, but somewhere between 19 and about 25.
It's full-time equivalent.
Full-time equivalent would be the 19, yes.
I'm sorry, Councilor Pease, were you finished?
Yeah, fine, thank
Okay.
you.
Councilor LaChapelle, were you, or,
Council Jelias was before me.
well, right, but I'll,
Yes, yes.
yeah, but we'll proceed with you for right now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to ask you the same question I asked the police department and the fire department on how many people have a card to the library? How many members of the library? If I go to rent a book, I have to get a,
Sure.
yes. So how many of those do we have out?
I don't have an exact number today, but the last that we ran it, it's between 4,000 and 5,000
4
at
and
this point.
5,000. How many of them were used during the calendar year of '22?
That number I don't have here with me.
Okay, so that's just, it's the service. How many do we have out? How many are actually used? My understanding, we're no longer charging for late fees or anything like that for books being returned.
We're not charging for late fees, as in if somebody keeps a book out late and then they bring it back, we charge them with a punishment for that, the late return. However, if they don't return the item after a set amount of time, usually about 3 to 4 weeks, we charge them to replace the item. That is still happening.
Okay. And getting back to the staffing, I had heard that you had some grave concerns on security and just the facility itself. During any given time of the day, on average, how many people do you have in the library?
Probably in the ballpark of anywhere between 20 and 50, but that can fluctuate pretty wildly. It could get as low as 10 and as high as 200 if we have a program happening in the building, or programs, multiple.
Okay, that's it for right now. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And you'll get, I'm sorry, you'll get back to me with that information on, thank you.
I do want to note that library card usage only really represents materials being checked out. So we wouldn't request a library card to be presented for attending a program, for example. If you're a parent bringing your child to story time, they don't use their library card then. So it's not necessarily indicative of library usage, just the card usage.
So how do I have the ability to track the actual usage instead of somebody going in and taking a nap in front of a computer and Del Factor using it as a warming center or just staying there all day long, 7 hours? How do I tell the difference between the homeless population that's in the library and the actual usage of people that are going, that want to use the library for its purpose?
We do track statistics, and we put those on the library website. So we track anything from computer sessions that are used. We track Wi-Fi usage in the building, program attendance, materials being checked out. We track community and individual room rental reservations of the different spaces in the building. We also track various database usages. So all of these numbers we do have available.
Okay. So when I heard you having staffing problems, and everybody's having staffing problems across the board, everywhere. I know in my business, I've had to adapt. I've had to close some stores on certain days because we just don't have the staffing. How have you and your staff looked at the dilemma that you're in right now with possible shortages? Are you looking at closing certain hours, not having length of operation? If there's a problem with I heard you're concerned on safety and the environment in there. Is your board looking at time limits for people being in the library? That somebody can't just be in there for 7, 8 hours in front of a laptop or something to that effect? What kind of protocol, or are you, and if you are, what kind of protocols are you looking at?
Primarily, we are looking at the hours concerned. One idea that has been floated by staff is the potential to close to the public for as much as a full day, while continuing to have full-time staff in the building getting work done that right now they're not necessarily able to between customer service obligations. So they would be in the building while the building was closed to the public. And that would allow us to shift some of these temp wages times to the other times of the week when we are completely open to the public and better staff the building. So we would have more eyes around the building. We would have just more people around, which could deter some of the safety concerns that we have right now. In terms of curtailing, services or uses in the building, we haven't looked at things like time limits. We do have a building monitor position. This is somebody who moves throughout the building, keeping an eye on things, making sure that issues aren't happening before they're real issues. And so something like a reduction in open hours would allow us to better staff that. Right now we have 38 hours a week where we do that, but we are open 50. So those kinds of things would actually allow us to better keep an eye on the building.
And would that directly affect your budget situation?
It wouldn't, that I'm aware of at this point.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Jelinek, did you?
Thank you.
Yeah.
First off, thank you, Director, for the work that you do, continue to do. I know life in the world of a library isn't the same as it was years ago, and, that's to be appreciated. Actually, as I went through this budget, it struck me as pretty lean, to be honest with you. When you think about 50 hours a week that an organization is open and there's no, again, no overtime line item there. So, that's really, I'm in and out of the library a lot, and it never really strikes me as being overstaffed, that's for sure. So I know people are working pretty hard. And I felt this way as we went through the budgets tonight. I mean, usually I'm here asking questions about, why the increase in this, why the increase in that. And this is true for utilities tonight as well. But what seems to me is there's just a lot of decreased proposals. So I can tell there's been a lot of work in terms of looking at some of these lines and bringing these, whether it's printing services, whether it's, what else, materials and spending, some of those went down. The continuing education, some of those. So I want to make a comment that, there's obviously been some good work done, and we're usually here questioning every line item, but these particular ones tonight struck me as pretty lean. So anyway, back to the library. Thank you for the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Further comments from the council? Director Perez, thank you for everything. Tell your staff thank you, and we have several trustees here. Thank you very much for being here.
The next department is debt service on page 75. The overall increase of $345,047 or 4.7%. You're going to see the principal decrease, $549,986. This is due to one of the 2003 bonds being paid off in fiscal year '23. Interest increase of $160,172. This is based on the estimate interest for the fiscal year '22 LCIP bonds that the city will be doing the bond sale for coming up soon. Economic development, you want to mention?
Before we jump
Sorry,
on to economic
lease.
development, there was one new account this year. It's you will see it at the bottom, it's the fixed charges for the lease, the $734,861. That is kind of a placeholder. The way the Mill 7 lease purchase works is based upon occupancy permit. So we are assuming that we will be given an occupancy permit in this fiscal year. One could argue with the construction season and so forth, is that going to be in February? Is that going to be in May? That's, still up to in the air at this point. One of the things that I've kind of mauled around, given this is kind of the construction piece and it may not come to fruition, is do we put this placeholder as part of a fund balance item for this year, given it's a year of construction, rather than the operating budget? Once we have moved into that building, it will become a normal operating item that would not be eligible for fund balance funding. But that's going to be on one of my parking lot items to revisit with you. Now we can move to economic development. Sorry about that.
On page 76, economic development remains flat. This is the steam plant. So there's a transfer that was calculated for capital reserve with this. The reserve requirement has $134,292 funded currently. There is an additional $75,000 recommended on the fund balance for this in fiscal year '24. There's an additional $250,000 requested in the fund balance to establish the economic development reserve. There was last year, so it was started last year in fiscal year '23. So it's got a balance currently of $250,000, and we're requesting on the recommendation for another $250,000 for that reserve for fiscal year '24.
To just provide a little bit more detail for the council, just as a reminder, because I think you were fairly new when we discussed it the first time. With the option on Mill 5, part of that option included the developer to assume the steam plant. So at that point in time, the city would be done with the complex. Part of that assuming of the steam plant, when we bill out, or when they bill out steam costs for the tenants that are there now, part of that billing includes a capital reserve. So the negotiations, the stipulation in the contract said, all right, whatever that reserve balance is, goes to the developer when we transfer that steam plant. That's why we are making sure that that reserve is staying current. As far as the $250,000 economic development, this would be the second kind of pot of seed money, which would bring us up to $500,000. This allows the council flexibility for those projects that do not fall into normal federal regulations, HUD regulations, low mod income, Davis-Bacon wages, all of that good stuff. So it gives us another accumulation, or if the city would like to sponsor some kind of economic development program to serve as a catalyst for economic development projects in particular industries, target areas, things like that. So it gives you some funding to work with. And so that's why we're slowly, incrementally increasing that pot available to you to make those decisions.
So next, we're going to go to intergovernmental on page 77. Just to touch upon, tonight we were supposed to go over the Auburn-Lewiston Airport. The board is still working on the budget. We are asking that it be flat funded. to what was in the budget last year. The board hopefully will have, we're gonna start a meeting tomorrow night for the budget. Hopefully, we will have it before you guys wrap up your budget season. And under the recommended for fund balance of 36,000, and this is not in this number that you see, is a replacement of a 2006 pickup truck that is at the airport that cannot tow what they need to do up there. Plus, it is, I don't want to say falling apart, but it's causing more repairs than need be. So they're looking to replace that. So this 36 is the Lewiston's portion, and then Auburn would have to pitch in the other 36,000. So next we'll move to LA Transit. Okay. So LA Transit is also on page 77, overall increase of 40,537 or 13.1%. The city budgets an annual 50,000 in the bus replacement through the fund balance to replace buses as needed. In fiscal year 20 and 21, the Transit Committee was awarded the CARES Fund, which significantly reduced the operation contribution needed for the fiscal year 21 from the city. The funds were carried forward and reduced the fiscal year 23 request. Non-subsidy revenue for fixed routes increased $68,040. In federal funds, $68,040. Fare box revenues budgeted flat. Fixed cost route expenses increased $123,788. It was all an increase in the WMT's operating contract of $93,688. Operating expenses increased $73,200. Preventive maintenance contract $20,488. Fuel $48,000, and a decrease in staff administration of $17,900. The non-subsidy revenue for the paratransit increased $4,641, all in federal funds. The cost decreased $9,913 due to the decrease of the contract, where you saw the increase in the fixed route cost. You'll see a decrease in the paratransit cost for that contract. And that is, you received his memo and his budget in your packet when it was sent out to you on Friday. Do you want to do?
Yeah.
Yeah, did you have something, Heather?
She's the next workshop.
Oh, I see, okay. Councilor Pease.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On the letter, it says that he's requesting $450,782, but yet in the subsidy line item on 77 is $350,70. What's there a difference?
Yes. So Tracy had mentioned at the beginning, we had saved CARES money. Rather than taking the full credit in 1 year, we have deliberately spread it out over a series of years, so we are not getting the increases that other municipalities are related to that. We have one more year, FY '25, wraps up that CARES fund credit. So you'll have one more benefit, and then in '26, we will need to start budgeting for the full amount again.
Okay, thank you. That was just a discrepancy I noticed.
Right.
Thank you.
Further comments about transit?
All set? Do we want to go over county? I mean,
I think they already know
Yeah.
that.
Okay.
The county, yeah.
Sorry, 1 second, Director Roy. Councilor Pease, did you have something?
Yes, thank you. I meant to ask you, it says that you budget for 60,000 gallons of fuel, and you run 5 days a week. That's saying you're burning 231 gallons a day, and you have 9 runs. How long are those runs?
I would have to get that question for you answered from Lawrence, I'll make sure I write it down and contact him and ask him.
Okay, thank you. I'm all set, thank you.
Councilor Harriman?
Thank you. Being on the transit committee, I was just going to speak to that. So the bus runs Monday through Friday, a full schedule, and then Saturday, a partial schedule. And then there are, I'm trying to think of how many, there are about 9 runs per route, but then there are, I think it's 6 routes, 6 or 7 routes. So if you total those up, that might add up to more fuel. But Larry Allen would have more information, better information about that.
Yep, we'll get
I
you the
will,
schedule.
yeah.
Thank you.
So council, before we jump on to the next item, there's no meeting Thursday. So next week, before the city council meeting, we will cover the general government suite of funds as well as code and planning. And then we start hitting kind of the miscellaneous categories, the miscellaneous revenues, the nonprofit request, and so on and so forth. So if there are adjustments, if there are, questions you still have, parking lot items, I'll be sending out an email, kind of gathering some of those items. At that point, that's when we'll start seeing the first round of proposed cuts or adjustments to give you an idea of where the tax rate stands now on the city side.
Thank you.
Meetings start at 6
Yes,
next week.
yes.
Thank you, Director Roy.
Thank you.
Hi,
Please introduce yourself.
I'm Angie Morris, Marketing Communications Director for the City of Lewiston, and I'm here today to workshop with you all a special event for the city this summer. There are some big items that sets Lewiston apart and enables the city to even entertain a special event of this size. First, there's scheduling and timing. As you know, Lewiston has some pretty spectacular, huge events throughout the summer. So to land on a date that is conducive to both parties is miraculous. Secondly is venue. We are fortunate to have a big outdoor space that can accommodate a large number of folks. So infrastructure is critical. And finally, senior staff, or city staff. As you know, we have the Lewiston Police that always has our back. Fire department is always at the ready. Public Works is just fantastic, and they were fundamental in helping to pull off the Holiday at the Plaza event. And of course, city administration is willing to go outside the box. So together, it's a pretty impressive team. So with that in mind, I hope I can answer questions.
So we have not a lot of detail we can share unless we go in executive session because negotiations have not been finalized on any of the contracts yet. But what this allows us to do is look at an event this summer that schedules align with one of the contracted parties to have a summer music festival. And if we move forward with that, there would be a combination of sponsorships as well as city event organizations and other activities during this particular event. So part of that is predicated on signing some contracts and looking at the event budget that we are considering for fund balance for FY24. But we really need to lock into those contracts now, or we will need to wait a year in order to start this type of event. So that's kind of the chicken and the egg right now. We have an opportunity that kind of fell in our lap that we talked about whether it could really go this summer. It would be a mighty aggressive schedule to get everything in place. but recognizing our marketing director started in the fall and pulled off a very spectacular holiday festival. I have full confidence in her in doing that. It's just, is it too quick to do that this year from a major event standpoint? I mean, it's got a fairly substantial budget. I think Councilor Harriman recommended us looking at event insurance to cover some of that budget. I know Angie's looked into that, and that is available, so that will help defray the cost. And then I know Councilor LaChapelle has offered to, help us with some of the contract information, given his background. So we do have pieces in place. It's just solidifying that and whether the council feels comfortable at this point in time in moving forward this year with this.
Just to be clear, Administrator Hunter, so have you basically told us all that you can tell us here publicly?
Pretty much so.
Okay, and to learn anything else, we will need to go into executive session?
Given the contract negotiations and the events, yes.
Okay, gotcha. I guess given all of that, some questions. Councilor Pease?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. How many events are we looking to put on this year, roughly?
So from the city's perspective, for the number of events, including this one, it would be 2. This one and the Holiday at the Plaza.
Okay. And as you said, if we put this off for a year, will we still be able to get that person? Or
We could use the same logic. It may be a different venue.
Yeah, just curious. Thank you.
Councilor Harriman?
Thank you. So if you are able to divulge, do we have a date in mind, and do we have, is it one performer? You mentioned maybe music festival. Does that mean multiple performers over a long day or 2 days, or?
It's targeted for one event day at this point in time, but multiple performers.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilor McCarthy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Administrator Hunter, what's your comfort level, percentage-wise, that we can accomplish this and do a good job?
It depends on the weather forecast, but other than that,
Taking the weather out of the picture, seeing as I don't have a good connection with the up above.
I feel comfortable with it. I think this first year is like any first year. There may be a few kinks in it, but I think it provides us an opportunity to look at it and improve and have that start to be, we now would have essentially almost 2 large semi-annual projects. And to the director's point of view, not only do we fund 2 major events, we also are the lead sponsor on several other events. That includes the Balloon Festival, that includes the Liberty Festival, that includes the River Fest, that includes the Taste of Harvest. We are those lead sponsors on all of those. So that also takes not only money that we've provided for events, but also staff time as well.
And my feeling is something like this would be a big plus for us.
Yes.
And I think, perception is everything. And I think even if we struggle a little bit first year, you're going to struggle first year anyway on any project of this size. And so I think that my opinion is that I would be comfortable moving forward with this. And I think there's many people up here on the dais that would pitch in to help out if needed. So, you've got my thumbs up. Thanks.
Okay.
Well, at this point, unless there's a desire to say something else, are you looking for a vote right now to head into executive session to discuss this?
If the council wants more details.
Thank you. Councilor LaChapelle?
Yes, I had a couple questions regarding this and a couple other non-regarding this.
Please proceed.
Okay, so you mentioned the 4 festivals that were that we sponsored last year, is this an annual level of senior sponsor for the Balloon Festival, all the other festivals? And at what dollar amount are we talking for these 4 festivals that we're doing currently?
Typically, they all average right around 10,000, and then there's in-kind component as well.
Okay, so it's not a
No.
$100,000 input on it?
Correct.
Okay.
If I may, for one quick second, Councilor LaChapelle, we also provide in-kind support to many other festivals and events, correct?
Yes, and you will see that listing a week from Thursday is when you start reviewing those requests.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor.
Thank you, and there is plenty of time to put on a music festival at this point, even in March, April, May. Depends the date that you're looking for. If it's going to be May something, we're cutting it kind of close, but there's plenty of time to put it together. And you know, we're looking at the Bangor waterfront that people from Lewiston drive 2.5 hours up all the time to go to Bangor. We're the second largest municipality in the state, and we constantly get overlooked, We have to be careful, though, because it depends the price of the tickets. This is, it's strange. People from Lewiston will drive to Portland and Bangor and spend a lot of money, but they don't want to spend it here in town.
Right.
So we just have to be careful and keep that in mind. But there's plenty of time. Excellent. I'm full of support, and I'd be more than happy to help you in any way possible. Again, I have a little bit of experience in that field.
Thank you.
Councilor Clement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do we know if Buddy the Elf will be available to help us with this event?
I think you will be in a different outfit during that event.
He only needs to be dressed up.
We would prefer dressed, absolutely. I mean, I'm fully in support of this idea. I think it'd be great.
Well, at this point, I would like to, have a motion to move to executive session to hear more details.
Might I
Oh,
ask?
yeah,
I
Councilor
have 2
LaChapelle.
unrelated questions before we go to that motion. I just don't want to leave without a couple
Right,
of
oh, okay, sorry, I didn't realize you were still,
Yes.
yes, no, please proceed.
So-
Well, sorry, one second. Councilor Clement, did you have anything else
I'm
at
all
this?
set, sir. Thank you.
Okay, now Councilor LaChapelle, thank you.
In light, and this is for the city administrator, in light of the recent school shooting, that the tragic shooting that just happened again in Tennessee, what is the policy, or does each of our schools have a police officer 24/7 while school is open in their schools?
That would be a question we can pose to the superintendent. I am not privy to a
Well, I
lot
didn't know
of
if the
it.
police department has a,
Right, I know they
It's a-
do have,
School resource officer?
school, I'm showing my age. I used to call them
Deputy
officer
city
friendlies,
administrator's
but, so,
There is a school resource officer in the middle school and the high school. There is one school resource officer who was assigned to Connors, but he circulates among all the elementary schools. So there are 3 school resource officers assigned to the schools. So there is not one in each individual elementary school.
But there's always one at the middle school and always one at the high school?
That is correct.
and when they're on vacation or something like that, the
That-
officer's on vacation, is that position filled with somebody else at that time?
It is not, but those officers, because they kind of follow the teachers' schedules, they tend to take their vacation, during the summer months.
Okay. And for the lack of a better term, these are armed officers?
Yes, they
carrying
are,
at that
yes.
time? Okay. Okay, and thank you for that. And one other question, in light, and Mr. Mayor, I guess this is a question for you, in light of the recent television interview and the information in the newspaper, I just had a couple questions. Have you had any communication or conversations with Lewiston Housing Authority, State of Maine, or any Maine State Housing, or any other state official about this proposed shelter over the last 4 months?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and would you enlighten us on what those are?
Yeah, I don't mind. So after the fact, I knew that Lewiston Housing submitted the application.
So how long have you been involved with this? Since December? when they were
No.
starting to pursue that?
No, sorry. Just to be absolutely clear, I only knew about the application, you're talking about for the shelter that just received Main State Housing funding.
Correct.
I knew after the fact, after it was applied. I was not a part of the application process.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Thank you.
Are we, at this point, if we're interested in hearing more details about the event, I guess, musical event, may I have a motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Or-
to go in an executive
thank you.
session to discuss Title I, Section 4056C, I will entertain a motion to go into executive.
Counselor Pease,
Second.
second by Counselor Clement. All in favor?
All in favor? Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.